Florida's profile of progress is actually the profile of her people. A youthful, vigorous people who are making Florida the fastest growing, most dynamic state in our nation. Enjoying that something better that they know Florida has to offer them.
Tallahassee, its capital city, lies in the northern part of the state, 500 miles from Miami, and a century removed from that city and the traditions it displays of an antebellum South.
Tallahassee was like so many southern cities, like all southern cities really, in that it was heavily segregated. Blacks lived in their section of town, whites lived in their section of town. Blacks were heavily constrained with how much they could participate in the regular commerce and social life.
In the Springfield area, there was a lot of families there, a lot of families, and we consider the Springfield area would be from Tennessee Street, Woodward, Macomb, and within the Springfield community, you had a laundromat, you had a service station, you had 3 grocery stores, so people own businesses, in the Springfield, community. Back during that time, we didn't talk about housing problems and, in our living standards, because there were some people living right down the street from us who was not as fortunate as we were.
Tell me a little bit about what the 50s were like here. How would you describe Tallahassee?
If I could say in just nasty words, it was stink. It was prejudiceness, racial hatred. It wasn't fit for nothing, hardly.
We think of it as a long time ago, but it was part of people's growing up, and so when people talked about things that happened to them, I felt like it was really still pretty fresh, and they were still pretty hurt, and they were still kind of bewildered. There were still 2 women in particular spoke to the fact of why would people treat other people like this? I mean, there was still this questioning of how this could have happened to begin with. What school? Where'd you go to school?
It was a little school off of St. Augustine Road named Green Howe, and then we graduated from that school to go to Lincoln. And that was a bad time too. It was really a bad time that year, because when we were graduating, our teacher carried us to town to get us some white dresses. And I never forgot that store, the Vogues. I think that was the name of the store. We went in the store, and I saw the people looking funny, but I didn't know what was going on then. And so they talked to the teacher. And by the way, the teacher was a real fair lady. Really, they thought she was white. And they was wondering what she was doing with all these black kids. So she told her she was a teacher. She sent us out. She said, "You all go back out and stand on the sidewalk till I come." And when she came out crying. And we wanted to know why she was crying. And we thought maybe they had wanted to do something to hurt her. And she said, "No, they didn't want to hurt me." And she didn't want to tell us what they had told her. But we kept asking questions until she had to tell us. They told her that we could not try on the dresses. She had to try on the dresses for us. Now, can you imagine a grown lady trying on dresses for somebody in the 9th grade? And we were so upset. Yeah, it's no such thing as separate and equal. No, that's what they say. It's separate, but it's separate and equal, but that's not true. And it's still, I'm telling you, check it out.
From what I'm getting, it was totally segregated. The schools were totally segregated. Blacks couldn't go to the library. They couldn't try on clothes downtown. They could eat at a drugstore, but they had to be off in a certain section. just all those kinds of things. You couldn't go on, FSU students couldn't go on FAM campus, FAM students couldn't go on FSU campus. It was separate existence for the most part.
At that time, blacks had to give their seats to white people. I'm not lying now, okay? But when Carrie and I transferred, going to FAMU, the only room was where the 3 seats. Now, when I got on the bus, people were standing up all the way back to the back of the bus. And so me and Carrie sat next to the white lady. There was a seat. The bus driver said, "You girls can't sit there." I said, "Why?" He said, "You just can't sit there." So I got up. I said, "Well, give me my money and I'll get off." He said, "I can't give you your money. It's down here and here, and I can't." So I went back and sat down and crossed my leg. I mean, people were all the way down the whole thing, standing up, and there were no more seats. Except those 2 seats, and it was something like 30 people standing up, in the back of the bus. So he called the policeman, and then he came on the bus and said, "Are you girls having a problem?" I said, "No." I said, "I told him if he would give me my money back, I would get off." "Oh, you want to ride? Come on, ride with me." And carried us to the police station, and after we got through talking with him, then he let us go.
I think what's clear from talking to the overwhelming majority of sources out there who are still around and who knew them is that none of them was particularly political, We're talking about, we talked to some people who would drive for hours and hours and hours in cars with them back and forth from their hometowns to FAMU, and, they talked about music, and they talked about there were some FAMU musicians who were starting to make a name for themselves, and what was the dance going to be like back in Lakeland that night, and who are you going to hang out with, and what's the movie of the week? I mean, none of this is, let's overthrow the government kind of stuff, which is really interesting in the broader context because, at that time, anybody who took a position like that, the government, the FBI, and the people in power in Washington immediately suspected communist ties in this big ideological conspiracy, and these people can't possibly have minds of their own, and there must be this big thing behind them.
So we stayed there that night when we first got there that evening. And then someone rang the doorbell, and one of the young ladies went to the door to see who was there, and she yelled, "Y'all, there's a fire out here." And we said, "What? A fire?" And that frightened us, because the bus driver was angry with us, So I said, "Oh, we got to get away from here." And that's when a cross was being burned where we were living. But what I was afraid of, I was thinking in terms that they would shoot us or kill us, Because anybody burning a cross where you're living, that's dangerous. But I tell you what, about that cross burning, it wasn't me. It was the students. Honey, they were angry, angry, angry.
History always turns on such small little details. What is it, Richard III by Shakespeare? For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. And then the battle was lost. In Tallahassee, the entire civil rights movement started because a bus driver would not refund 20 cents to 2 college students. 20 cents.
We called a meeting of the student body, and once I relayed to the students what had happened to the fellow co-eds, I said to the student body, "I cannot tell you what to do, but I suggest we refrain from riding the buses until appropriate action is taken.
We had not heard anything about a boycott or anything that had happened that day. And when we got on the campus, it was almost, there were crowds of students on both sides of the streets yelling and screaming and telling us to get off that bus, everybody on there. And of course, we immediately had an idea of what was happening.
My reaction? Well, let's get it on. Let's do it. It's time for a change.
We had a veteran club there, and we crossed the street holding hands and stopped the bus on the campus. And that was the beginning. But we didn't know it. We didn't know what was going on. All we were just doing, if you're going to put a student off the bus, why bring the bus on the campus?
When the bus boycott had started, the Florida A&M students were only a week away from graduation. In those days, college students left for the summer. There was a sharp delineation. You got to June and the city of Tallahassee cleared out. The local people also realized that the bus ridership, though many FAMU students rode the bus ridership was largely the domestic workers of Tallahassee, the maids and housekeepers who went to their jobs in the white community. So their congregations called upon the ministers. Their customers, if they were barbers or grocers, called upon, needed some leadership. So it was a sort of a logical transition for the adults to step in.
And so when, this boycott came in, I just feel it was just right down my alley. And that's when the community came together. And they say, well, we have got to do something about this. It's something got to be done. And that's, they just called I guess church, tell their members they're going to have a meeting at Bethel AME or Bethel Baptist, and then all the people just came. And then they formed the Inner Civic Council. They formed an organization named the Inner Civic Council, and they elected Reverend Steve president.
But there was a very warm and a wonderful feeling, and there was so many people was working together for something.
Well, take me back. What were you doing at the time that this started, and how did you first get involved?
I was in my business. I was a barber. And I was in my business working. And all of this happened. I didn't really know what was going on until that night when they called a mass meeting at Bethel Baptist Church.
I know those initial meetings, I've heard several times that there was like 500 people at that initial meeting, and that they had anybody who came could be considered part of the ICC, but they did have an executive board, and they originally had about 9 members. 5 of them were ministers, and the other 4 were kind of business kind of people.
I was in charge of collecting the contributions and turning it over to the treasurer. And seeing that we had proper transportation to help people get to work.
The paper had an effect, okay? The paper had an effect, but probably with unintended consequences. I think the paper helped to galvanize the black community. It taught the black community that their message was not going to be told through the mainstream media. Not that they didn't already understand that, but it certainly brought it home through this.
Of course, all of the officers had met and was given the responsibilities that we were supposed to accept. And the secretary, Dr. M.C. Williams, said, Barrington, you will sing a solo for us tomorrow night on the program. I said, man, sing a solo. She said, yeah, you can sing. I heard you sing. You sing in the choir. All day long, I wondered what in the world could I sing that would be appropriate for the meeting, because we all had decided that we was going to walk instead of ride the bus.
Everything rattled around the ICC, from my perspective, and that's all I knew. That's all I knew, that because there was so much attention to that group.
The crowd drafted a 3-point plan of demands. Bus seating should be on a first-come, first-served basis. Drivers should treat all customers courteously, and the bus company should hire black drivers. Until those demands were met, the ICC said blacks would not ride Tallahassee City buses.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you, the song you said that you sang one of those first nights, that song that you said that you sang one of those first nights?
You'll never walk alone.
Do you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
Would you sing it?
Now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know if I know it right now.
Or even one of the refrains or something?
Hmm?
Did it have some kind of chorus or refrain or something?
No, I say, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the storm. See, we was in a mighty storm at that time. At the end of a day, there's a golden sky and a sweet silver song of love. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you never walk alone. You never walk alone.
I was fortunate to work for a dentist here by the name of Dr. Millard Williams. And as a result of working for him, I became involved, when I say involved, when I say involved with how I got involved with the bus boycott was basically I was one of the pool drivers, and I utilized Dr. Williams' vehicle. He had 2 vehicles, and when I got out of school, I would go to his office because I went to the old Lincoln High School here in Tallahassee. So when school was out, I would walk to his office, pick his vehicle up, and we would normally go the bus route, during the strike, to pick up, the people that was at the various bus stops. And then also, there was a location downtown, right where the new city hall is now. It used to be like similar to a farmer's market down there, during that time. So basically, that's where most of the people gathered. In fact, most of the people gathered. That was downtown. You would go through there, right in front of City Hall, there was a bus stop. Then right across the street from City Hall, there was a bus stop. So you would go in either direction, and picking up people, to transport, back to the homes.
They had a service station in Frenchtown, and that's the way they got a lot of gas like that. Just like I don't want anybody to think that all these white people was bad people, because they were not. Because had they been, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. Because they could go to them and get gas. Or, they used to have these big cans, sometimes if they didn't want to line the cars up there, because, they would, if you see too many cars going there to get gas, it's going to be something was wrong. So they used a lot of cans, like to get gas and stuff.
At first, the city, I think, turned a blind eye. From what I've gathered, they're not going to take the buses. Who cares? All right. Very soon, the bus service started going out of business, and had to ask for an increase in the rate, and the city allowed them to have that, and that didn't help at all because, you know, the overwhelming majority of people rode the buses were black. So I think very soon the bus company kind of turned around and turned against the city commissioners because they didn't want to go out of business. The whole idea of segregation was that one group of people, and this is true in every country that has ever had social divisions and second-class citizens, the whole idea is to have one group of people in a position of power and economic and political power over another group of people. If doing that, the purpose of doing that, I think, you know, from what I've gathered, is that it's to your economic advantage. Well, if it's not to your economic advantage anymore, the whole idea is just kind of worthless.
We were charged $500 for operating, but 90 days and $500. But they suspended the 90 days and held the $500 charge against us. So we had people who had put up money for their land, some land and some cash. Dr. Stevenson put up a lot of money.
A Western Union telegram from C.K. Steele to Governor of Florida, Leroy Collins. Dear Governor Collins, as you may know, a number of Negro citizens in Tallahassee, the capital city of Florida, are being subjected to various types of prosecutions by the city. We have not been able to discover any white citizens who have been subjected to such prosecutions. We are thus led to the conclusion that these prosecutions stem mainly from the refusal of Negro citizens to continue to ride the privately owned bus system under the present intolerable conditions. Very truly yours, Reverend C.K. Steele, President of the Intercivic Council of Tallahassee.
With the September conviction of the 22 drivers, the boycott, was clear. The boycott could not go on officially, but equally clearly, this was a battle that was not going to go away. First, the drivers were all fined and convicted, so now they ended the boycott. But they were still going to challenge the lack of integrated seating. Steele and two other reverends get on the bus. They challenge it. Life magazine takes a picture. National attention is being drawn to Tallahassee as a city that's dug in its heels. 6 college students get on there and challenge it, and even though they are convicted, the joining of the movement by white students from Florida State, as well as the gradual support of the movement by some white families in Tallahassee, was beginning to sound the death knell. The fact that 87 white people voted for K.S. DuPont as a city commissioner said, hey, we're not all behind you on this. The fact that people like George and Clifton Lewis would host rallies at their home, that Jim and Lillian Shaw from Quincy would lend their support and be on the Human Relations Council. The fact that John Boardman, an FSU white graduate student, hosted a party at Christmas of 1956 that included black students, showed that there were, if you were, cracks in the wall, that all white people thought that it was fair to treat black people this way. So here comes this steady pounding against the way it has been.
Who do you expect today to do something about injustice?
I couldn't be back then because I couldn't do nonviolent things.
You don't have the patience?
I'm not going to sit there and let somebody put their hands on me, sit down on me. If you guys would have beat me, I would have beat them back.
Some discrimination is just by your gender, your sex, or what your skin color is, who you hang out with, or how you act. It's still going on today.
It looks different than it did in 1956,
but it's still
just
going
as hurtful.
And nobody, as you see in here, nobody has ever admitted, no public official has ever admitted that the Tallahassee bus boycott was a success. But it was. There were 3 demands. You all know what they were.
Yes.
Yeah. Greater courtesy on the bus, first seating on the first come base, and hiring black drivers. And they got all that.
I think
In fact, I remember hearing my dad say that the Tallahassee bus boycott was even more successful than the Montgomery bus boycott. There's something very peculiar and very significant about Tallahassee. I don't know exactly what it is. I majored in sociology, but that's the sociologist there. But Tallahassee is very important because Tallahassee is a leader when it comes to civil rights in this country, and it's barely documented. Yeah. In fact, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was conceived, as perhaps most of us know, by Bryant of New York. Yes. And when he came up with the idea of organizing leaders, ministers across the South, he first called Tallahassee. He called my dad.
When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white person a few months earlier, it wasn't about the bus at all. It was about a much larger struggle, a clash of forces.
It has to do with the spiritual progression of life, and I think it marked a spiritual revival, in a sense, of people moving forward towards the purposes of God in the world. And today, I think so many people have a displaced faith, and they have no real consciousness of what spirituality is and how it connects with the progression of society today. And a lot of people are just not connected with it. And for me, the civil rights movement is about the spiritual message that came forth. There was a spiritual message out of all. Okay, the boycott occurred, the demonstrations occurred, but what was the message that these leaders were saying? What were they saying? And for me, they were saying, man, there's nothing that's going to stop the purposes of God. We'll trust in God as we fight, whether we live or whether we die.
I hope that people will use the paper and the documentary to educate. And education is the best tool to ensure that we don't go back from where we came from. We need to move forward. We need to take all of the lessons learned from the bus boycott and expand on. They got the 3 actions that they wanted, courtesy and all of the other issues, but now we need to look at discrimination the way it's presented today and tackle it in another manner.
In all that I go through,